With all of the flashy new PC hardware releases landing right now, it can be easy to get caught up in building high-end gaming PCs that lots of people just can't afford or don't want to buy. That's why today I'll be building a system for between $1,200 and $1,300 that offers up amazing 1080p and 1440p gaming performance, has lots of the creature comforts you'd find on a high-end system, and is fairly easy to put together, especially for first-time builders. I'll be walking you guys through not only the performance that this build can offer, but also how to put the build together, some tips on how to make it look great, and giving a few pointers on some mistakes to avoid in the process. Let's dive into it. Now, every gaming PC build is comprised of between 7 and 8 core components, and that's largely what this pile to my right contains. Every build needs a CPU and some form of graphics. You'll also need a motherboard to install everything onto, a power supply to provide juice to all the components, as well as some memory and storage, alongside a form of cooling, and of course a case to build the whole system into. So let me start, shall I, at no better place than the CPU. Now, this right here is the AMD Ryzen 5 7600, and it's the best CPU right now on lots of different metrics. Now, yes, it doesn't provide as much performance as a new top-of-the-range Ryzen 9 9950X. However, it provides 6 cores, 12 threads, and more than ample gaming performance. Now, you might think, James, what about Ryzen 9000? Haven't we got new Ryzen 5s? Yes, but you shouldn't buy them. The 9600X is not far from being 50 or 60% more expensive than the 7600 Non-X, despite representing a fairly small uplift in performance. Plus, when it comes to gaming, especially at slightly higher resolutions like 1440p, you're more likely to see a GPU than a CPU bottleneck anyway. Talking of GPUs, for this build, I've gone for the AMD RX 7900 GRE. Now, this particular model comes in from Asus. It's their TUF gaming card, and I chose it primarily because the actual silver accents on the case and the grey bits are going to match the GRE really quite nicely. AMD cards seem to be harder to get hold of in white colorways, so I wanted to create a build with a white and silver aesthetic. At least that's the plan. Now, this at 1440p is a monster. It offers amazing performance in all the latest AAA titles and those esports games too. It's going to give you competitive frame rates in the likes of Fortnite and Apex Legends, breaking through easily the triple-digit FPS mark. But don't worry, you can still play Star Wars, Black Myth Wukong, Alan Wake 2 with no problems. And while it doesn't have as good ray tracing performance as what you'll find on Nvidia, nor is the FSR technology, which is AMD's sort of AI-powered upscaler, quite as good as DLSS, it does so at a great price point. I've seen these cards as low as $530, and if you're wondering about the $1,200 to $1,300 price range at the start of this video, the cooler you go for is going to determine which budget the build lies. You can save money by going basic, or you can spend a little bit more, like I've done with this Asus TUF gaming card. In terms of the memory and storage, so the long-term and the short-term memory in this build, a 1TB Crucial P3 Plus is going to provide us all of the speed that we need when it comes to decent read and write, boot up times, and is available in a range of capacities, while the Corsair 32GB Vengeance kit is going to work great. This kit is slightly slower than I remembered. I'm going to link the 6000 MHz CL30 kit down below for Amazon and Newegg. That is a slightly better buy and is going to actually increase the performance I'll be showing off in this build by another couple of percentage points. DDR5 speed and latency really does make a difference. Motherboard wise, again, against the backdrop of new AMD X870 motherboards, it can be easy to get caught up and forget about B650. This particular board comes in from Gigabyte, and it's a more bare bones design, but one that's going to tick all the boxes we need for the build today. CPU socket that's AM5, check. Gen 5 NVMe slot for super fast future SSDs, absolutely. Nice I/O with good connectivity, most certainly. The only thing really you're going to lose out on is VRM cooling and loads of high-speed connectivity. Of course, those new X870 boards have got loads of USB 4, loads of 10 and 20 gigabit USB Type A, but frankly, you don't need it. And this is a build that still provides decent upgrade paths for higher end CPUs and even a GPU upgrade in a couple of years' time too. I'm also going to just quickly touch before completing any installation on the power supply and cooler. This right here is Cooler Master's GX3 750 Gold. It's part of Cooler Master's range of updated power supplies, and it's ATX3 and PCI Gen 5 natively. Basically what that means is that it uses the new, more efficient ATX3 standard. It gives you better support for next-gen GPUs with the new cable, just gives you a better overall experience, and I like what Cooler Master have done here. I've also gone for a Cooler Master CPU cooler in this build. This is their Hyper 212 Halo White, one of my favourite tower coolers, the 212. Other options you may want to consider come from Johnsbro and Vetru. However, this has a bit more wow factor, and I love the powder coat white design. I think it's going to try and tie the silver white aesthetic I'm going for in quite nicely with some silver accents too, and an RGB fan. fan. Talking of Cooler Master, it's also worth referencing the case at this stage. And this is Cooler Master's white Masterbox 600. Now this case does a lot of things really well. It's got loads of mesh ventilation at the front, and behind that you'll find 3 included ARGB 140mm fans. For those of you who aren't familiar, they're larger than the standard 120s in most cases, and you get 3 as standard. The rear, you'll also find an additional 120mm ARGB fan. You've got grey rubber grommets on the side for things like cables, and you're thinking, James, there's loads of cutouts in the case. Yes, these are for BTF motherboards, and by the looks of it, not all ATX cases do this. This supports MATX BTF boards too. So again, from Cooler Master, pretty good job, guys. The only thing I don't like, and I complained about it in the build we did in the black Masterbox 600, is these at the back, which are single-use snap-out PCI lanes. Now this case is not particularly expensive, especially when you consider all the fans and stuff that come included, but I'll be honest, I do think that that is a bit poor. I just don't think that's worth the cost saving on Cooler Master's side from a user experience point of view. I hadn't realised the front 3 fans are SickleFlow fans. They're going to be pretty quiet and offer really good performance. I'm going to start things off by installing the Ryzen 7600 processor into the CPU socket, lift the arm up, and then just go ahead and drop the CPU into place with the golden triangle pointing towards the top left corner of the motherboard by the CPU power. Pop the arm down and the socket cover will just pop off nice and easily. RAM or memories next. I'm going to be using the 2nd and 4th DIMM slots in this build. Simply slide the RAM into place and do this for both of the DIMMs, and you can see that leaves some room for upgrades later as well. SSD installation is then one of the final stages on the motherboard. I am going to do the cooler in a moment, and this is just going to pop into the top Gen 5 slot. Now, if you're anticipating adding a Gen 5 drive in immediately, then pop this in one of the lower slots, but I want the cooling provided by the Gen 5 slot, so that's why I'm opting to use it in this system. Should be nice and simple. Just remove the retention screw at the end of the slot, then go ahead and slide the drive into place, sort of at a 45-degree angle before pushing it down. Then add the M.2 heatsink in, a few turns back on the same screw, and that should just fasten the whole thing into place. Next stage is the cooler, and it's the final thing I'm going to pop onto the motherboard. Now, as I say, really nice design from Cooler Master, and I need to figure out exactly how to go about installing it on an AMD-based system. There is an included manual, which is always helpful, which shows me that we need to remove the black plastic brackets as standard, and then add these 2 metal brackets in place with 2 small included screws. Really nice and simple. Then it's just to drop a thermal paste before screwing the cooler into place. I'll add the fan back on later once the motherboard is in the case. Talking of which, the next port of call is to throw the motherboard into the case, slide it into place like so. This case does have raised standoffs at the top and the middle center points, and I'm also going to remove the rear side panel at this stage, as I'll need to access the included bag of screws to secure this into place. So 3 screws at the top, 3 along the middle, and 3 down the bottom. This isn't an area where you want to be missing screws. You want to make sure the motherboard and the I/O are aligned perfectly, and I'm hoping that the silvery grey motherboard will tie in with the case quite nicely as this build continues to come together. Next stage then is going to be the power supply. I always really want to install the GPU at this stage. However, I know it's not the sensible route, because if I do that, I'm going to struggle to access all the cables and wiring in this build. Now, you might be thinking, James, this is a white build. Yeah, we've got a black board and we're going to go for a GPU that should tie in with the silver. However, this is a black power supply. Yes, that's right. I'm going to order some white PSU cable extensions and chuck those in. In fact, I do actually have these new ones from Easy DIY Fab, which actually have white connectors as well as white braided cables. So I don't need to order anything. I already have everything that I need. Maybe just a few cable combs to sort out after I've wired up the power supply. I'm going to be installing into the PSU motherboard cable, one for our GPU, so that's dual 6+2 pins, as well as a CPU power connector for the top left corner, finishing off once the power supply's in with all of those front panel cables too. If you'd like to learn more about cables and wiring, we've got a full guide, which you can watch in the cards now on our YouTube channel or at geekort.com at one of the first links in the description below. The GPU is then the final part I'm going to pop into the build, and as I say, I'm hoping that sort of the silver colour on the card is going to match quite nicely with the accents on the case, especially when all the side panels and everything else are in place. One thing you can't really tell from the photos and videos is that this TUF card is actually fully metal construction. Of course, the fan blades are plastic, but the back plate is metal too, making this card both quite heavy and also really well built. With these being snap-out PCI lanes, you are going to have to really make sure you check which ones need removing. And in this build today, it's slots number 2 and slots number 3. Ow. This is why I don't like them. So you need to bend them back using the clips at the back. Then you give them a bit of a wiggle. You do this repeatedly. There we go, there's the first one, and you can see that's not going in anything ever again. And then you do this for the second one, which is, of course, more stiff than the first one, because why wouldn't it be? Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Yes. Then push back the clip on the PCI slot, slide the graphics card into place. So the graphics card's in, a couple of power supply extension cables, some screws, and I think that's going to tie the whole thing nicely together. Points, by the way, to Cooler Master for this really, really conveniently located cable run for the GPU. Fits perfectly for this card. Let's see though how good this thing looks when it's all powered up, and I'll rejoin you for those all-important gaming benchmark numbers. And there we have it. It looks good. And I think as part of a setup with color match white peripherals, the whole system actually works really well. And the dark gray kind of black GPU fits better than I thought. But the important bit is the performance. And we've tested this system in a wide variety of titles. So why don't we start with a little bit of Apex Legends. Now, at 1440p high settings, this build pulled in a pretty impressive average frame rate of over 270 frames per second. You can see temperatures on the GPU were good around the 50 Celsius mark, while RAM usage was less than 50% in most of our testing during Apex. So the 32 gigs in this build is more than enough. Next up is Fortnite at 1080p competitive settings. It was the only game today we tested at 1080p. I just think this makes most sense. Competitive is where you tune everything down to low except the render distance, which was set to far, and my boy, did it perform. Here at 1080p, it did over 200 frames on average with 219 FPS all told. Move through into Hogwarts Legacy, which is a more RPG-led AAA title, and frame rates did deviate a fair bit. On the whole though, they were pretty good with around 91 frames per second on average at 1440p. You can see here where the RAM usage is much higher, over 25 gigabytes. That's where the RAM in this build is going to come in handy. And VRAM, as you can see from the on-screen data, is very high too. Something to bear in mind if you're going to be playing a game like Hogwarts. Next up on the list was Cyberpunk, using the in-game benchmark mode, using FSR 3's frame generation, testing at 1440p and with AMD ray tracing on. Now visually, I'm going to be honest, does not look as good as what you're going to find on an NVIDIA-led system. However, frame rates are still good and the visuals aren't bad. Frame rate, as I'm looking at it now, and on average across our full test, was about 112 frames per second, accounting for some of the high and the low spots. We're using CapFrame X now for all of our frame rate testing. So if you're wondering how we get the overlay, that's how. Moving through into Black Myth Wukong, again, another really, really tricky game to run, and a title that probably leans more towards NVIDIA when you think of the DLSS support within the game. Performance though was pretty good across the board, 130 FPS on average at 1440p high with FSR and frame generation enabled. Alan Wake 2 is next up at 1440p high, FSR again enabled, but no frame generation to play with this time, unlike what you get on NVIDIA. Here though, frame rates were really solid across the board and the game looked great with 130 frames per second on average. So good to see a nice performance spread across both the AAAs and those slightly easier to run esports games too. The final test though was Star Wars Outlaws, again taking advantage at 1440p high of AMD's FSR technology with frame gen, it's FSR 3. Performance was really good and the game actually looks surprisingly good given how many performance issues it's had at launch. Isn't that like the story with every game right now? Star Wars Outlaws though on this build did just shy of 180 FPS with 178 frames per second on average. All told, I was really pleased with how this build turned out. There are areas where you could save a little bit of money. The cooler is perhaps slightly more than some of the cheaper tower air cooler options. Similarly, I've gone for name brand RAM, I've gone for nice PSU cable extensions, but I actually think the color scheme works way better than I thought it might. And I'm just pleased with how a white theme system like this can look without spending a fortune. What do you guys think of this system though? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this one, get subscribed. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.